going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale Podcast. I'm your co-host, Coach Adam.
That's my line.
And ladies and gentlemen, in the house today, we've got Zach Columbia. You know, all know him well. And then we've got director Jolie as well. We are going to be diving into a pod today dealing with, had some questions in the last week or so about why we are on a fourth week, or people are starting to see a lot of the same workouts. So we're going to talk about repetition versus variation and some exercise selections and kind of the process behind that. But first, as always, we're going to go ahead and recognize a member client of the week. And this week we're going with Larry Torch. LT in the house, longtime member. He's coming back from a pretty intense shoulder procedure that he had, I think, earlier this year. And he's wasn't always compliant, and he likes to say it himself. Yeah. And he is now completely kind of on the bounce back here. He's been back for a few weeks, and he's pushed himself to his limits, and he's been great. I've been seeing him a lot in the afternoons. You got anything else on Larry?
I'll go because Larry started back up here for like the second time when I first became a coach here. So like over 10 years ago. And then he's left and come back and left and come back like a dozen times since then. Probably not a dozen. That's a little bit of exaggeration. But I just have to say, like, Larry is from a coach. Larry is the client that every coach wants to have, you know, like he's challenging in good ways, that keep you on your toes and keep you developing and learning as a coach. But he's so appreciative of what we do. Yeah. And he gets it from our perspective. And that's something that I always just loved about him, is he was like, you know, always looking to just make my life as easy as possible. But then at the same time, like, challenge me. Definitely and just, yeah. So it was great, because it was like this perfect balance of like, training you is making me better, but you also are so appreciative and get like my perspective. So it's just an interesting kind of, you know, dynamic.
It's fun. I like seeing him come through the door. It's going to be a good hour always.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get into the topic here. We are, by the time you guys are listening to this, we will have finished a hypertrophy phase, and that was 4 weeks in length. And we're going to discuss a little bit why we were getting questions as to, is this, you know, the same workout that I did? You know, it's a Monday today. Is this the same thing that I did last Thursday? And it's like, yes, it is. But there's a reason behind that. And, you know, you don't just do things once. And then we're going to be currently, while you're listening to this, in an integration week, which is a little bit more of a hybrid type situation where we like to mix things up and have a lot of variation. So let's go ahead and talk about why we repeat workouts themselves, or why we repeat, you know, some exercises and certain selection. And I think probably a good spot to start would be like building a skill. Right, we want to have technical mastery, and essentially that's how we work through our movement matrix in our programming as well. Like we have somebody that starts at a -2 on any given exercise, say it's a squat. We're looking for technical mastery to move them up and progress them through that matrix, so they're working up into the pluses and the +2, the +3, and so on. So reasons for repetition, what do you guys got?
Well, first of all, it's important for everybody to understand that it's by design, right? 100%. So that's the reason why you pay us, is for our expertise. And so one thing I've always found frustrating is, like, you know, somebody will be like, well, what, you know, I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? And it's like, well, you're paying us because we have this knowledge and study these things and know that in order for you to progress and develop and get the result that you're looking for, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And so one of the things is, like, repetition is your best friend when it comes to exercise and working out and progressing and getting results. Like, if you do an exercise one time, the very first time you do that exercise, you said technical skill, like you don't know how to do that exercise, right?
New stimulus.
Yeah, it's a new stimulus. Your body's trying to figure it out. Your proprioception is going like, well, how do I move this way? Where am I in space? And so the first time that you're doing it, you're just trying to do it. You're just trying to perform the movement. And then once you start to get used to doing the movement and you've done, 100 reps of something, then you start paying attention to like, well, what am I feeling right now? What's working? How do I get more out of this exercise? And then you become proficient at that. And then it's like, okay, now I can increase the weight that I'm doing. I can slow my tempo down. Like I can really engage these muscles. You can't do that without repetition. And so variation is the worst type of training methodology. If you think that, so there's been so many times somebody's come into my office for a consultation and they've been like, I had the best trainer in the world. We never did the same workout twice. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And under my breath, in the back of my head, I'm going, you had the worst trainer in the world because they had no way. All they were doing was entertaining you. They weren't getting you a result.
Yeah,
they weren't making you stronger.
Boredom.
And like, if I do one exercise, or if I do an exercise one time with 100 pounds, the only way that I can know that I'm progressing is if I do that 100 pounds over and over and over again until I can do 105 pounds. Right. And then I can do 110 pounds. So I have to track it. If I change any of the variables there, like I change my positioning, I change the variation type, I change from a kettlebell to a dumbbell or a barbell, the weight is totally different. The stimulus is totally different. So how do I know if I'm progressing or not progressing? I could stay in the exact same place, never go anywhere, and just throw a bunch of things at the wall and try a bunch of different, exercises. Variation is not your friend.
Right.
So.
Right.
Rant complete.
Yeah. I think over time that repetition, it can build confidence. Like you're saying, the first time you ever do a barbell squat, it's going to feel a little bit awkward, right? And we're here as coaches to help you through it and to set you up, make sure everything's, you're safe, you're progressive with everything, but it's going to feel a little awkward. And so over time, like that stability, coordination, like the repetition brings so much value. And yes, people are going to they're going to be like, oh, why are we doing the same thing over and over? What's your answer when people come to you to the gym and say that?
I say it should, first of all, it should not be the same. You should, if you're progressing correctly, there is, like you were just talking about, either you've changed your tempo, maybe the actual piece of equipment has changed, something like that, to you're just continuing to perfect on a movement pattern, and working through that is a journey. Like we like to tell people, they're on a journey here. That's basically how we scale our exercise selection, and working through that is, you can't just practice something 2 times and expect to move to the next level. Like it takes time. Like Olympic lifters, they'll practice a lift for like 2-3 years, and it's like you need to ingrain that in your muscle memory and continue to proceed.
Yeah, and it always frustrates me when somebody's like, I want to look like that, but they won't train the way. So if you look at like an elite athlete or a bodybuilder, somebody with like an amazing physique, right? If you were to follow that person's training program, like that person probably does the same 10 to 20 exercises every week, and they've been doing that for a decade.
Years, yeah.
So they've done those same exercises over and over and over again, but they just have changed the load. They've just changed like the tempo, and they adjust things. Maybe they do them in different orders. Maybe they structure them a little bit differently, but it's like the same core exercises over and over again. And so novelty does not, equate to results. It's really entertainment.
Yep. And then for kind of transitioning into more of a practical, or how like we integrate fitness into our members' lifestyles, there has to be a little bit of balance. So that's where our phases come into play. So the 4-week hypertrophy, for example, is a perfect amount of time. You're going to see the same workout 4 times, practice all the movement patterns that are there, probably progress through that to some degree, and then we throw in an integration week. So this is a quick variation, a positive form of variation because it's short term, but it's preventing things like burnout, joint overusage. We're trying to still give a new stimulus, but not for prolonged time. That's why like sometimes we have the exercise selection during integration week. Sometimes it's a lot more dynamic. It's a little bit more like things that you could see in everyday life, things that you need to be prepared for, different planes of motion that are, not always expected in your daily movements. So I think, too much variation, like you were saying, there's a lack of measurable progress. And then you do need to mix it in occasionally. And that's why we just do these little 1 week spurts where we have these integration weeks, and it brings the stress level down, and kind of, again, from a mental perspective, keeps people engaged, because as much as the repetition is important, we don't want to lose engagement and focus. Mm-hmm.
So like a hypertrophy, if you're in a hypertrophy phase, which is the whole goal is to increase skeletal muscle mass, or that's where what is known scientifically is like going to be most effective for increasing skeletal muscle mass. The rep range for that is like 6 to 12 reps. Mm-hmm. Okay. What we're doing is we're saying, here's a list of, let's say 7 exercises. Okay. So everybody's squatting. Here's a list of 7 squat variations. What we're doing is we're looking at Miss Johnson, our client, Miss Johnson, right? Or Larry Torch or whoever it is. And we're assessing them. Okay. And the client might not even know that this is happening, but we're looking at that client. We're saying, of these 7 variations of a squat, based off of a 6 to 12 rep range, what variation of exercise of squat is going to be most effective for that client?
That person, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's going to be safe. It's going to challenge them just enough to progress them safely. And they're going to be able to complete get the most out of the movement and learn the most. And so what we're doing is we might say, hey, this client is squatting at a level 1 right now. That equals a goblet kettlebell squat. Hold the kettlebell, and we're going to have you do, 12 reps of that. Once you master that and we can place more demand on you, then we might say, hey, instead of using 1 kettlebell, we're going to have you hold 2 kettlebells. Okay, now you mastered the squat with 2 kettlebells. Let's swap out the equipment, the kettlebells, and let's throw a bar, and we're going to have you hold a bar in the front. And that's what's appropriate for that 6 to 12 rep range. However, when we transition from a hypertrophy phase to a strength phase, now the goal is increase your overall strength. So we might say a +1, right? Because we're doing less reps, we're doing, we're doing 5 reps.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
A +1, we're okay to do a barbell at a +1 because there's less reps. There's less room for error for you to mess that exercise up. So we can load you heavier from the beginning. We can place more demand on you knowing that you don't have as many reps.
Yeah.
Now it goes the opposite direction when we go into an endurance phase, because you're going to do 25 reps and we know that you're going to fatigue and you're going to try to start cheating. Your body's going to be like, hey, how do I cheat and get this done without going full range of motion,
right,
or compensating somewhere, and then there's this risk of injury. So then we're saying, no, a +1 is actually regressed from that, and we're going to use a dumbbell instead of a barbell or instead of a kettlebell. And so what we're doing is we're looking at that and we're saying, okay, what is the objective of the phase? The objective is increase muscle mass. The objective is get stronger. The objective is build muscular endurance. Well, we have to look at the objective of it. Then we have to look at the client's movement quality and capability. And then we have to match them up with the right the exercise that's going to place the perfect amount of demand on them to get the result from that. And so it's like, let's master this in the hypertrophy phase. And then I know where you're going to go next, which is like, if we master that, that's setting us up for success in the next phase.
Right.
So I'm sure that's where you want to go, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
I don't know if you guys have heard the Pope give a sermon, but I think you just heard it.
Does the Pope poop in the woods? Is that how the saying goes? No, just kidding.
Yeah. So we're going to be going, we got to master things at a repeatability level. Now we're going to try to, as the goal changes going into the strength phase, we're going to now focus shifts to load, increase overall strength, and we have the confidence, essentially all the repeatability that can, mental burnout for some people or annoyance. It's leading up to this goal of, okay, here comes the climax now. We've mastered what we can. Let's load up to our max capabilities. And we see it, like a lot of people, they hit maxes all the time during strength, and that's basically the payoff for what's been building up to that point. I think when we look at people in sometimes we only have like a ceiling, right? Like we have let's just take, since we've been doing squats, a barbell back squat. It's like the highest level, right? It's a +3 here. We can start to play with things like tempo, and a lot of times, how am I trying to say this? The variability and the creativity is a lot of times up to the coach to kind of give on the spot. So a lot of times during strength, load is put in the forefront of like the priority list essentially, but I've started to think of ideas on how to challenge like our really experienced members, and bringing in other pieces of equipment too is like a little where you can drop in little pieces of variability that can keep interest levels or kind of set new goals. And I think that helps people's mental a lot of the time. Like I've thought about putting, people hang bands off the side of their back squat sometimes, and that can add a new component to a back squat that's even in a strength phase. You've loaded it up to your max, but you feel like you can't go anymore. Maybe it's discomfort of the bar on your shoulders, something like that. But you throw on a couple of bands with a couple of small weights. You've added a little bit of variability in there. It's going to continue to challenge you, and that's what we'll try to do sometimes to help you establish new goals and continue to grow. We got anything else on the two?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, so one of the things that has always frustrated me is most people can put together a decent workout on their own. It's like I could, just about anybody can go on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and they can snag some exercises, and they can go in and they can do that workout, and feel as though like, hey, I got a good workout in, perceived effort. Very few people have the expertise to do everything that we're talking about. They don't have the knowledge to take somebody and say like, okay, this workout and these exercises that you're doing are going to impact what you're going to be doing and how you perform 60 days from now. And so that's always under the surface. That's something that a client can't necessarily see, but it's what we're doing in the background. And I obviously haven't been on the podcast in a while. Jolie's taken over as the director for me here. And that's because I'm teaching this stuff to gyms and to coaches all over the world now. And you guys have at our gym, you have Semi-Private Pro, which is the app that you use. And it's where all of the scoring systems and the phases and our movement matrix and all of those things are built into that. So the coaches can go and execute on it for each individual client here. And so, like it's I'm not trying to like toot my own horn. I just want everybody to understand, like, you were at the forefront of where the whole entire fitness industry is headed. And I'm talking to these industry specialists and some of the best brains in the industry, and they all are kind of sharing the same universal vision, which is like, hey, focus on movement quality first and the programming, and get your clients to do the perfect difficulty of exercise for them, because that's the thing that's going to matter in 20 years, where they still can perform. They have a high quality of life, and they age well, and they have longevity. And so it's just like, that's what we're trying to accomplish. The vision is that you get to live your legacy, not leave a legacy, right? We want you to have the highest quality of life that you possibly can. And so that's what we're doing in the background to make sure that everything you do here is impacting really your overall life.
Right. And we've talked about it a little bit in the past about people hunt that fast fitness feeling. We talked about it with the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion. Yeah. And we had an example of a client who was, back and forth between this feeling that he was experiencing and these other types of classes and things like that. And people can get very caught up in the here and now. And it's like, how did that workout go today? Am I dying? How did I feel? And people can get very caught up in that, or they're looking down at their watch. How many calories did I burn in the last?
It's a very naive way of looking at it.
It's very here and now, and that's not. We are on the forefront of building up essentially the journey for the rest of your life and setting you up for that longevity and the high quality of life, because it's a lot more important than the here and now type workout mindset. So
we need to shift everybody's thinking away from that. It doesn't feel as sexy, but I would rather be able to move well and be strong when I'm 80 years old. So
exactly.
Than sweat right now. So all right, guys.
Cool. All right, I think we're gonna call it right there. We'll wrap it up, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale Podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.